When you think about the future, you're probably imagining something amazing. Flying cars, robot servants, cities on Mars even. Fiction, it has trained us to expect either a utopia or an apocalypse, with very little room in between. But if we look closely at fictional media, and not just one story, but many, we start to see a pattern develop. The most likely future, it's not the most spectacular one. It's the most familiar one, and it's just slightly distorted. I want to talk about the most likely future, as suggested by decades of fictional media. Not just the coolest future, and not the scariest, but the one that keeps showing up again and again across books, films, television, and video games. One of the biggest misconceptions in fiction is that the future arrives all at once. One day, society, it flips a switch, and then suddenly everything is different. But when we examine the most believable fictional futures, they don't drastically break off from the present. In stories like Black Mirror, Her, or THX 1138, nothing truly alien appears. The technology already exists in some form, the politics already exist, and the social problems, they already exist. What changes is the scale. Surveillance, it doesn't suddenly appear, it just becomes constant. Algorithms, they don't take over, they become unavoidable. And inequality, it doesn't begin, it becomes normalized. The most likely future is one where yesterday's experimental technology becomes tomorrow's background noise. Terminator. Older science fiction, it imagined technology as large, visible, and dramatic. Giant computers, massive robots, and control rooms full of blinking lights. But modern fiction tells a little bit of a different story. In The Matrix, Ex Machina, and Blade Runner 2049, technology, it becomes intimate. It whispers, it listens, it adapts specifically to you. And it doesn't dominate the world, it integrates into our emotional lives. And this aligns with real trends that are happening today. Our most powerful technologies, they aren't even visible. They live in your phone, in the cloud, and in data centers that us normal people will never see. Fiction reflects this by showing futures where technology, it feels less like a machine, and more like a presence. The most likely future, it's not one where the machines replace humans outright, but where humans become dependent on systems that they barely understand, and they become emotionally attached to the ones that talk back, the ones that they think understand them. One of the most consistent themes in believable fiction, it's inequality. I hate to break it to you. In Alita Battle Angel, Cyberpunk 2077, and Altered Carbon, the future, it isn't shared equally. Advanced medicine, yes, it exists, but only for the rich. Space travel exists, but only for corporations and vacations. And immortality even exists, but only with a steep price tag. These stories suggest something important. The future, it doesn't arrive everywhere, all at once. Some people, they live in what looks like science fiction, and others, they live in what looks like modern-day decay. And the most realistic futures, they don't even pretend that this divide is temporary. They show societies that adapt to inequality instead of solving it. Fiction, it keeps telling us that the future won't be fair, but it will be efficient. Apocalyptic fiction, it often treats climate collapse like it's a single moment. A flood, a fire, a deep freeze. But more recent fictional media, it paints a subtler, more realistic picture. In stories like Children of Men, Station 11, or The Road, environmental collapse, it's not the plot. It's just the setting. Characters, they don't talk about climate change constantly. They have to live with its consequences. The most likely future, it isn't one where a climate disaster ends the world overnight. It's the one where the world continues, just worse. Like in Fallout. The food is more expensive, the weather is less predictable, migration increases for humans and animals, what's left of the animals anyway, and everyone just adjusts their expectations downward. Fiction, it suggests that the future won't feel like the end of the world. It will just feel like a long series of compromises that all lead to the end of the world. Another recurring theme in realistic fiction is the quiet erosion of traditional authority. In cyberpunk worlds especially, the governments exist, but they're weak, slow, or irrelevant. The real power? Now it belongs to corporations, platforms, or even private entities that control the infrastructure, data, or the access to these resources. This isn't presented as a coup or a revolution. It just happens. People don't pledge allegiance to a nation, they subscribe to a service. The most likely future, it's not one where power is enforced by law alone, but by your terms of service. Despite all the technological change, one thing never really seems to evolve in fiction, and that's human nature. People still want love, they still fear loss, and they still make irrational decisions. All the time. Even in far future settings like Dune or The Expanse, the conflicts are emotional and political, not just technological. Jealousy, ambition, loyalty, and fear, they remain the driving forces. This may be the most realistic prediction that fiction makes. The future? It might not fix us. We'll have better tools, more data, and faster communication, but the same primal emotional software is still running underneath. When you put all of this together, a picture starts to form. The most likely future from fictional media, it's not a dystopia where everyone is miserable, nor is it a utopia where everything works. It's a world where technology is convenient but intrusive, inequality is visible but we all know it's unnecessary, environmental damage, it needs to be managed and reversed, but human connection still exists. Fiction, it rarely predicts the future accurately in detail, but it predicts patterns extremely well. By repeatedly showing futures that are plausible, uncomfortable, and familiar, fictional media, it isn't trying to scare us. It's trying to deter us and prepare us. It's not trying to prepare us for invasion or for extinction, but rather for adaptation. The most likely future, it's not something that happens to us. It's something that we slowly agree to, day by day. It will feel inevitable until someone decides that it isn't. And it will be shaped not by technology alone, but the choices that we make while telling ourselves that nothing is really changing. Because according to fiction, the most realistic future, it's not the one where everything goes wrong. It's the one where we keep going anyway, no matter what happens. So far, these futures, they may sound bleak, but fictional media, it doesn't only imagine decline. It also shows us conditional hope. Futures that are better, not because humanity became perfect, but because it can learn from its mistakes. Like post-scarcity societies. In franchises like Star Trek, Monk and Robot, and The Jetsons, we see a future where basic needs are no longer the central struggle. The energy is abundant, food is reliable, and automation, it handles much of the labor that's needed for survival. What's important is that these worlds, they're not free of conflict, but they are free of desperation. People still disagree, politics still exist, but survival, it's not a weapon you can use anymore. Fiction, it suggests that if technology is used to reduce scarcity rather than maximize profit, the future, it could become calmer. Not perfect, but more humane. This is one of fiction's strongest optimistic claims, is that when people aren't constantly afraid of having nothing to lose, they have everything to gain. When we ask what is the most likely future, we'll always get a complicated answer. The most likely future, it's uncomfortable, but it's not hopeless. It's familiar, but it's not fixed, and it's shaped less by machines and more by the choices that we normalize. According to fiction, the future, it's not just a single destination, but it's a direction. And the most realistic futures, both good and bad, they're built slowly, quietly, by what we decide is acceptable, and by what we decide is worth changing. And for the love of all that is still good in this world, please try to prove George Orwell wrong, just once. Thank you for making it to the end of this video. Leave a comment about what you'd want to see in the future, or a couple of the things that you might be a little apprehensive of. Or if you have any other ideas, drop them down below. We may just talk about it. Peace.